Hello there, and welcome back to Cloud with Chris Weekly Vlog 17. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. Now, thank you for joining today, Weekly Vlog 17. You know the deal. We'll be covering the Azure blog, the Azure update, the Azure Devops blog, the GitHub blog, Cloud with Chris, and in this session I'll also be updating on another little pet project I've been working on as well. So, you know the deal. Please go ahead, please like the episode if you enjoyed the content. Please hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, like 90% of you who listen into the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know as soon as I release new content as well. So a bit late today because, as you may have noticed over the weekend, if you live in the UK, the weather was absolutely glorious, so it was a good opportunity to go to the pub in a socially distanced way, go and meet some people, and actually go to the shops and get some much needed clothes as well. So a good opportunity to do something as different that we haven't been able to here in the UK for a while. But of course, I've also been doing some Cloud with Chris things, as we'll update on the pet project side of things a bit later as well. So with that, let's just go ahead and, as normal, let's go ahead and dive straight in here. Okay, so let's start with the Azure blog then. There were only a few blog posts this week, but this one particularly caught my mind. Being from the UK myself, there was a partnership announced with the UK Met Office. So the UK Met Office, for anyone who's not local and doesn't know, is our meteorological office. So does all of our kind of weather predictions and weather reports and these types of things. And what they've announced is they are partnering with Microsoft, with Azure, to make a super powerful supercomputer. So really interesting story there emerging. Really look forward to hearing how that one evolves, how that one goes. But really interesting update there. So a great update and partnership there in the Azure blog. Next up then, and this one is not so, I don't want to say the word relevant, but it might not be as appetizing to people outside of the United States. But there is something called Azure Trivia, which is effectively a series of different quizzes or trivia and questions. Every Monday on Twitter, a new Azure-related question gets released. And if you get it right, you'll be entered into a weekly prize. If you're in the United States. If you're not, you can play for fun, I guess. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not something available for folks outside of the United States. But 10 opportunities to win prizes, and the prize kit looks pretty cool. It's like a package of different things there. So again, that might just be worth checking out, whether you're playing for fun or whether you're eligible, as it says on the blog post here, and explains what the terms and conditions are. And then you can go ahead and potentially win some prizes as well, which is pretty cool, which includes an IoT dev kit. So for all of you makers out there, that would be a pretty cool prize, I think. And that's pretty much it. There wasn't too much in the Azure blog post this week, so we'll move swiftly on here to the Azure updates round. So starting off, announcing general availability of new M-Series, MSV2, MDS V2 medium memory VMs for memory optimized workloads. Azure Virtual Machines DCSV2, now available in public preview in Azure Gov. General availability of application gateway URL rewrites. That one's pretty cool. So actually the base URL can now be rewritten, which was pretty interesting as an update. Couldn't do that before with App Gateway there. Azure Data Factory announces data flow general availability in 2 new Azure regions, which are US Virginia Gov and US Arizona Gov. Azure Purview resource set patterns rules available in public preview. Action required, upgrade your AML cluster to Ubuntu 18.04 LTS by the 30th of April 2021, because community support for Ubuntu 16.04 ends on the 30th of April. So be aware of that. Keep that in your mind if you are using that. Public preview of Azure Purview is now available in UK South and Australia East regions. And finally, public preview enhancements to encryption using customer managed keys for Azure Backup, which again is quite an interesting use case. I think last week we saw the customer managed keys scenario for the host VMs of Azure Kubernetes Service. Now we're seeing the preview for custom managed keys for Azure Backup as well. So again, that focus of bringing your own keys to these kind of scenarios, you can see that arising there. So great set of updates. Not so much to run through this week, so we will continue moving swiftly on. And next up, we've got the Azure Devops blog. First one is another of the Azure Fun Bites episodes, and this one is all about chaos engineering. And chaos engineering is such a fascinating topic. It really brings together two of my passion areas: the DevOps side, where you're running your tests and running all of those things in a cohesive and a planned, automated, pragmatic way. And it also brings together the architectural side of things, how you're thinking about your resilience, your availability, all of these kind of things. And chaos engineering, I think, was really made big by Netflix, because I can't remember if they used Chaos Monkey or if they developed their own tool in-house, but regardless, chaos engineering is something absolutely you should be considering if you're more on that mature end of your kind of DevOps methodology and DevOps approach. Why not, as part of each release to production along the way somewhere, you go ahead and test what happens if maybe one of those Kubernetes pods falls over, or maybe if one of those Azure Function instances gets recycled, or maybe if the entire set of virtual machines gets removed. What happens? How does the rest of the application deal with that? Are there cascading failures? Have you got a good bulkhead pattern kind of set up to deal with those kinds of incidents? And that's really what the chaos engineering approach gives you, is rather than waiting for the incident to happen, you can be prepared, plan ahead of time, and make the necessary adjustments then as part of your DevOps planning. And because it's part of that DevOps cycle, you can prioritize, hey, do we need to go and put new features out? Do we need to work on triaging this and improving the quality and the resilience of this? And take that guided and methodical, data-driven approach there. So fascinating topic. If you've never heard of chaos engineering, that will be a great video for you to go and listen in on with Jay Gordon and Anna Margarita Medina as well. So encourage you, go ahead and check that one out there. And then again, there wasn't a lot to do with the Azure DevOps blog this week as well. So a few updates this week. There is a live event happening on Tuesday, April the 27th. So if you're watching this live or listening to this later today, tomorrow, otherwise you may need to go back and watch that, I guess, depending on when you're watching it. But that is going to be all about Azure DevOps with GitHub. So that'll be a very interesting event there. I think more of the same in terms of the community updates, and it's great to see some of these themes popping up here as well. But Dash of YAML's the perfect dressing in Azure DevOps, so of course that's going to be all about YAML pipelines there. Azure DevOps and creating your cloud adoption framework, particularly interesting there if you're on that journey of your adoption of cloud, I suppose there. The Azure DevOps CLI, again, if you've been using the GUI more rather than command line tooling or REST APIs, dives into that one with Adrian there. And then finally, deploying Bicep with Azure DevOps pipelines as well. I think that's something we've seen come up a few times. But again, really getting a lot of traction, because I think people really see how Bicep is making it much more accessible to go and create this infrastructure as code compared with ARM templates. The language is a lot more succinct, a lot more easier to understand, and just a lot more digestible. So again, a good set of updates there, so go ahead, check those out as well. And then finally, the GitHub blogs before we move on to Cloud with Chris. So really interesting set of updates this week. There was, of course, a mission to Mars that you may have caught recently. And one of the really nice things that has come out of that, actually, is to do with how open source really helped on that journey, quite literally on that journey when you think about the journey to Mars. The project used several different open source tools, frameworks, repositories, etc. So what GitHub has done, just like they had done with the GitHub Vault, where they went and took everything that was publicly available on GitHub and stored it in the Arctic vaults and gave everyone a badge, They're doing the same here with this Mars 2020 helicopter scenario. So, that first flight on Mars was powered by open source. And I think that's really cool. I haven't got a badge, unfortunately, so it wasn't a project I contributed to. But it's been really lovely seeing on Twitter how people are celebrating that and how there is this such wide community which has helped on that voyage, on that first milestone of flight on another planet. How amazing is that? So just love the fact that GitHub is celebrating that. That's a really nice story to start the week here. Next up then, they have announced that there are new and simplified enterprise and partner terms. Not going to be jumping into this one, as fun as it would be for a Monday morning, but effectively the legal T's and C's have had some review and some reduction and whatnot, and for Microsoft customers they can apply their existing terms as well. So you'll need to read into the details of that if it applies to you, but go ahead, check that one out. Next up, a topic which I'm sure is on the minds of many, no least myself, given I work with folks in the manufacturing space, and there is a huge opportunity for manufacturing companies to make a drastic contribution to sustainability for the entire world, given the amount as an industry that they go ahead and impact that number. I can't remember the exact figures, but they were quite some sizable percentages. GitHub talk about, because obviously it was Earth Day, unless maybe you didn't realize it was Earth Day earlier on last week, they talk about some of their commitments to how they're going ahead and impacting their own sustainability commitments there. So talking about being carbon neutral since 2019, they want to be 100% renewable by 2025, they want to be carbon negative by 2030, and they're talking about how it's not just what they do as a company, but also keeping their remote workforce accountable for that as well. And then they talk about how, and I thought this was quite interesting actually, how they're going to almost reuse some of the servers that go out of purpose and reuse them and decommission them, maybe bringing them back to life as well where they can. Zero waste offices, including the home offices as well. Waste diversion, being water positive and water advocacy as well. So again, if that's an area of focus and interest, go and check that blog out, because I just find it really interesting how some of these companies are approaching this. And of course, we need more. We need to keep doing more, because at the current rate, things aren't looking good for the planet. We do need to keep doing more on that front there. And the final GitHub blog here today is a GitHub Actions update. And really, this is about helping maintainers, so those open source projects, open source contributors, combat against bad actors. Effectively, what they've seen is scenarios where bad actors will go ahead, open pull requests on these open source repositories. So they'll have a fork, they'll start the GitHub action running, and that's leading to things like crypto mining abuse. So what they're doing to make sure that the open source projects don't get really attacked from that perspective is a couple of things. Number one is they're updating how they assess reputation on GitHub Actions. So if it's kind of ran and deemed to be something which looks a bit fishy or a bit grey, then they'll potentially go and block the fork. They won't go and block the upstream account. So the open source maintainer won't get blocked. It'll be the fork itself that is running that action. And secondly, if you're a first-time contributor into an open source project, there'll be a manual approval required by the open source maintainer, which I guess will create a bit of overhead on the maintainer itself, and I have seen some mixed feedback about that on Twitter. But nonetheless, I can see the logic and the reasoning why they still want to protect the actual maintainers, right, from potentially having crypto mining type, scenarios running in their actions and that impacting their open source project. So again, I do understand the logic and the reasoning there. So those are a couple of updates there, how GitHub are looking to protect those type of maintainers and contributors. So with that, let's jump into Cloud with Chris and talk about all the things we've been working on this week. So we'll do rapid fire here. First off, on Monday, it was a blog post on getting started with Azure using Microsoft Learn. So really a blog post of a topic that I've done a cloud drop on before. And yes, I know I haven't done a cloud drop in a while. It will come. It's just things have been a little busy at the moment, I'm afraid. Then also on Monday, we had weekly vlog number 16. So again, you can catch last week's updates there if you haven't already. Wednesday then went ahead and blogged about Azure role-based access control at the data plane, something fascinating that I am really enjoying seeing when you look at things like Azure Storage, Azure Key Vault, even Azure Kubernetes Service and services like Cosmos DB as well. You're starting to see that role-based access control is being brought in to manage permissions at the data plane. So no longer do you have to rely on things like shared access signatures or the storage account keys, for example, in the storage account, or access policies in the key vaults, or the Kubernetes RBAC model. I guess you still do to a degree. But again, what you can see the point is there is having these different, not standardized approaches, and instead standardizing and converging onto role-based access control in Azure across those different platforms there. So really great to see that standardized model. It'll be interesting to see whether that also means we can start assigning those through things like bicep and arm templates as well. I haven't digged that far into it yet. If you know, drop an answer in the comments because I'd love to understand that, because again, I can really see it going in that kind of direction here. But fascinating, and yeah, really great to see that. So again, catch that one in that blog post if you're interested. So it was a busy week, because then on Wednesday I also did a talk for the Leeds Azure user group, talking about GitHub Actions, how they can help in building and deploying a static website and more. So thank you for having me there. I know it was a nice small group there we were speaking with, but it made it nice and intimate, some good questions and some good discussion there. So thank you for having me, and it was a great experience talking to you folks. So would love to come back again. I think we talked about maybe coming back to talk about some logic apps. So yeah, we'll work that one out for sure. And speaking about things which will be coming back, we also talked on Thursday then with Carl Cook about the Cloud with Chris the Cloud with Chris architecture and GitHub setup. Mainly we focused on the architecture, and we didn't get as much of a chance to talk about GitHub Actions in as much depth as Carl would have liked. So we are going to be doing that again. I think it was on the 3rd of June is the next one. So keep that date in the diaries. Haven't quite penciled that in yet, but you will see that one coming up. Great discussion. Absolutely loved it, and it's really made me realize I want to do more of that type of thing. So getting people on the show where we talk about things that they have made, talking about the decisions behind why they've made some of those decisions, not just the architectural choices that they've made and the how, but also the why and the what and the reasoning behind that. So that's something I'd love to do, trying to get people to talk about those pet projects and whatnot. So that'll be very interesting. If you've got ideas, if you've got a pet project you'd love to talk about, let me know, because it doesn't have to be anything super solid. It could just be something lightweight that you're working on as in development and you want to bounce ideas on. And hold that thought, because we will be covering one of my pet projects where I'd love to get someone in to do the reverse to me. So hold that thought there. Finally then, last week on Friday, a discussion on Azure Spring Cloud with my good friend and ex-colleague, still colleague at Microsoft, but my previous team, Github. So brilliant episode. I learned so much during this, and I think you really see that in the way that I approach the discussion, the way that Git is kind of talking through these various concepts. My Java days were way back in university, so I haven't really done much with it since, and Git walks me through what is Spring as a framework, what is Spring Boot, what is Spring Cloud, and how that all comes together, and some great examples there. So if you're a .NET developer or even a Java developer but haven't really used Spring before, this is going to be a great session for you. And if you are a Java developer who's used Spring Boot, Spring Framework, but not Azure Spring Cloud, again, maybe the second or the later parts of the video and the podcast itself will be interesting for you. So there is definitely something in there for anyone, and really great session. So again, thank you so much, Gita, for coming on and talking about that one. Really appreciate that. So then this week, of course, we are recording vlog number 17, so you're listening to that right now, so hello. Today also I'll be releasing another blog post, this time on Logic Apps, and I have done an introduction to Logic Apps back when it was actually, I think, in preview or just released. This one is again a little bit like an introduction to Logic Apps, but with the spin of how I use them on Cloud with Chris. So how I cross post on Twitter, on Reddit, and some of these other platforms when I go ahead and release new videos, for example, new content. So talking about that piece. Then on Wednesday, there'll be another blog post, half written at the moment, so I need to get into gear and actually finish writing that one up. But that one is going to be all about going ahead and using Logic Apps V2, some of the differences, some of the things to be aware of with the kind of traditional Logic Apps, if you like, and Logic Apps Previews, I believe what it's formally called. Logic Apps V2 is something I've been picking up from people. But then also on Friday, I'll be doing a session all around Azure governance. So I might do that one as a live stream. Haven't quite decided yet. But again, that will be coming up as a session on Friday. So we'll be marrying up the concepts of the cloud adoption framework with Azure governance there. So that'll be an interesting one. And in terms of talks this week, we've got the DevOps Knots tomorrow. So that will be talking about GitHub once again. On Wednesday, then, I'll be delivering a lightning talk to the Glasgow Azure user group, talking about Azure Storage, Hugo, Azure CDN for a cheaper performance site on Azure. So that is pretty much what's coming up this week with Cloud with Chris. But one more thing, as I mentioned. I've been working on a bit of a project and something that I've had on my backlog for Cloud with Chris for some time. And I figured that actually I'm not going to be the only one who has this problem, because I've been looking at others in the community and how they solve it, and I wasn't quite satisfied. So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to, as soon as I go ahead and publish a blog post or an episode on my website, that I can go and cross-post that content over to sites like Medium, Dev2, and others. And I'm getting some mixed opinions about how to do that in the community. Some are talking about importing it. There's different standards for Dev2 and Medium. I don't really want to be copying and pasting and leaving it to manual error. So, you know me, I figured surely this is something I can go and automate. So this is something that I have started working on. And this is my project called the Hugo CrossPoster, and I might rename it because I guess it's more of a generic YAML CrossPoster. Very rudimentary at the moment, so it is very geared towards my particular project, my particular setup, but I would love to have someone come on the show. We do something as a live stream. Maybe we pull up either GitHub code spaces on my end, or we do like a Visual Studio sharing session, for example, where we can go ahead, almost do some reviews of the approaches and maybe some considerations and refactoring, talking during the session, because I think that'd be a really fascinating session for people to learn from and understand. But effectively what it does is it's a .NET Core console application, goes ahead, takes a folder path along with the Medium integration token, the Medium author ID, the Dev2 integration token, and several other bits and pieces. And what it will do is it will go ahead, scoop all of that up, read through based on a filter what files you want to go and process. And then if you've configured it all correctly and you've specified the tokens for Dev2 and Medium, it will go ahead and spit those out then into Dev2 or Medium. And I just added yesterday the functionality as well to detect if there is a YouTube property in the front matter of the file as well. So what that means, for example, is we can go ahead to a site like Medium, where you can see I now have a presence, and you can see I've got a couple of blogs here. So one is my session with Carl that took place on Thursday. The other is a blog post from about January time frame or so. So I do need to go back and add some of these blog posts. You can see I've added some of the images, etc. here as well. But what is the point in this, Chris? You've got cloudwithchris.com already. Why do you want to go ahead to sites like Dev2 and to Medium and go and post this all up there? The reason for that, quite honestly, is making a broader reach and getting my growth. Now, the reason you don't typically want to just go and copy and paste that across is because there are certain things from an SEO perspective that can go against you if you don't be careful. And one of those is making sure you point back to a canonical URL. So when you go ahead and manage a blog post on Medium or Dev2, you can go ahead and point a canonical URL, so where the content was originally posted. So what that means is to make sure that I'm amplifying the content and pointing back to my site, helping from an SEO perspective, I need to get all of that right. Also notice that there's a difference between how Dev2 deals with some of these formatting pieces as opposed to how Medium deals with it. I don't think we will see how Medium deals with it. I think they render it in line rather than showing the markdown. Yes, but literally in Medium, it is just pasting in the full URL of the YouTube video. So again, there's these different standards, and I don't want to be in the mindset of copying, pasting, doing manual over here. Oh no, I've done it wrong. Oh no, I've got the wrong link, this, that, the other. Hence, me starting to work on this particular project. So very early days, very rudimentary. I don't have things like retry patterns and, backing off and all of these kind of things at the moment. But what I do have is starting to break it out into the different services, like a Dev2 service, for example. You can see in here how I go and append some of that YouTube information if needed. You can go and see, for example, that I've left it open to convert from other formats, not just Markdown. So I think that this has the potential to go into quite an interesting direction. And really, my request would be, if you're someone who is been with .NET C# for quite some time and are intrigued by this project and would love to help out in some way, I would love to do a live stream with you and us have a bit of a coaching or guidance session to talk about where we can almost battle harden this project a little bit more. So this is a journey that I'm on, very much at the beginning of it, but I think this can be shaped into something really interesting. So I would love your support if you tick those boxes there. So please go ahead and consider that there. So with that, let's jump back and wrap things up here. So thank you for listening in, folks. That has been the session today. So without further ado, you know what to do. Please go ahead, like the episode on YouTube, hit that notification bell, and subscribe if you haven't already, because 90% of you are not subscribed. We are now on 427 subscribers. That means we are 73 subscribers away from my end of 2021 goal. We got 8 months left, thereabouts. But please, would love your support there. So if that is not your cup of tea, if you prefer an Apple podcast, a Google podcast, a Spotify, or cloudwithchris.com, where you can go and listen to the content as you read the transcript, then that is absolutely fine as well. So thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, especially depending upon what part of the world you're in. I know there are some terrible scenes and things coming out of India at the moment, so I wish you all well. You are all in my thoughts and prayers, so please look after yourselves, stay safe and healthy, and until next week, thank you for watching as always and your support. Bye for now.